Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason. Here are your hosts, Richard Saunders and Stefan Sojka.
This is truly a miracle. Richard, we're back.
Stefan, we are back.
This is amazing. After all these years.
You know, it took us... How many years did it take us to escape from the tank?
Decades. It was last millennium sometime.
It was, but we're out now. We're out of the tank and we've gone into the zone.
The zone, the Skeptic Zone.
Here we are.
It's amazing. The whole world is a Skeptic Zone now.
I think so.
It's become like that. It's just spreading everywhere.
The skepticism is zoning out.
And I'm zoning in. I'm in the zone right now.
I'm in the zone too. Here
Richard,
we are.
it's great to be back. And thanks for having me back too, because I thought for a while there that we were gone forever.
Well, after the last series of the Tank podcast, I was gone forever.
You were, yes, you worked
like
very hard on that.
And I thought I had a little break, and I thought to myself, what do the people want? What do our fans want out there? They want a podcast they can listen to on their pods while they're exercising,
driving, eating, anything, reading, whatever. Reading and listening at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's pretty clever.
No, it's true, because, I mean, the podcast thing is great, and but of course it's sort of more ubiquitous to have audio, because you can actually listen to it anywhere.
Exactly. So all you people right now who are walking your dog, or on the treadmill, or on the treadmill,
yep.
Welcome to the new zone.
The Skeptic Zone, and what a place we have created. It's a global enterprise. We've got people all over the world submitting stories, producing content, and we're set to be quite a phenomenon in this world of skepticism.
I hope so. We've got our reporters, as from the old days of the Skeptic Tank and then the Tank. We have our reporters, Michael Wolloghan here in Sydney. We've got Dr. Karen Stolzno in the United States.
Very good.
We have Kylie Sturgis in Perth in Australia.
She's excellent as well.
We've got Jason Cook in the Gold Coast. It gets better. And now we've got our two new friends on the show. We've got Dr. Rachael Dunlop here in Sydney. Yes. And we've got Amanda Rose. So our family is growing.
It's growing. But not only that, but the connections you've been making in our little interlude that we've had of quietude. You've created you've been everywhere.
I've been everywhere. I tell you where I was. I went to Atlanta, Georgia for DragonCon. And I took part in the skeptical activities there. And in fact, the first part of our 3-part story about DragonCon and the Zone Live is coming up directly after this, where we have a little chat, and then in the coming weeks we interview Dr. Ginger Campbell from the Brain Science Podcast and the bad astronomer Phil Plait.
Exactly. You've just met so many people over there.
For those of you people who haven't been to DragonCon, make sure you go next year. It's incredible.
And here's me just thinking all I was having was a hiatus.
Yeah.
And
oh no.
It was amazing.
It was amazing.
So what have we got in store? What's happening this inaugural Skeptic Zone podcast?
After the Zone Live, which is coming up in a moment, we've got a interview with a guy called Mark Roberts, or Mark Gravy Roberts. Now, he's an interesting skeptic because he's a skeptic of skeptics. He's a skeptic of the 9/11 conspiracy skeptics, because they have some pretty far-fetched ideas.
So, hang on, the skeptics... The skeptics think that the 9/11 wasn't a terrorist attack.
Well, it depends if you think the word skeptic is used a bit funny here. See, anybody can call themselves skeptic.
Because I could say I'm skeptical that it was a terrorist attack. I think it wasn't one. Or you could say I'm skeptical that it was one. I think it wasn't one. It could have been one, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I'll get back to you next week on that.
Is that how confusing it's going to be? But Mark will dissect all of that.
Mark will dissect that. It's a great interview that was conducted in New York. That's coming up a little later in the show. And then we've got our first Think Tank section. Now, this is a live chat with Michael Wolloghan, Dr. Rachael Dunlop and myself. A couple of bottles of wine, some beers along the way.
Getting philosophical and scientific at the same time.
We are. It's all coming up on today's episode of the
Skeptic Zone. And so you're getting tanked in the tank. So the tank still makes a bit of a presence.
The tank's still floating about there, and all the past episodes are still online. You can watch Stefan and I doing the old tank. But
we look a lot better on podcasts.
I think we look better on podcasts. So for this episode, for the 26th of September 2008, why don't we just get into the zone?
Let's get stuck in it. I'm in the zone already. Let's go.
Let's go. Thank you, Richard. Yes, here we are at DragonCon 2008 with Karen Stolzno, Dr. Karen Stolzno.
Thank you.
And Kylie Sturgis. And welcome to the first live broadcast of the new show, The Skeptic Zone. Now,
Yay.
ooh. What was that? Ow, ow, ow.
I think this is the first time we've been together in the same room. I think the planets are aligned or something.
We are an international show. I mean, every podcast today is an international podcast, of course. Just to fill everybody in and our fans from the old show, about the old show, the tank, we've decided to have a new name because the tank was cute, and especially when it was the Skeptic Tank, it was a cute name. Skeptic Tank sounded good. We had to drop the Skeptic from the Skeptic Tank because it was getting confused with other people out there calling themselves Skeptic Tank. So recently we all got together online and we decided on a new name, and there were many, many, many names thrown back and forward.
Like Albert.
The Albert Show.
Absolutely.
The Kylie Show.
The Kylie Show.
No way. No one watched that, no.
And until almost last week, it was going to be called something completely different. It was going to be called
The Skepthink.
The Skepthink.
We thought of token skeptics.
Token skeptics.
Yours, yeah.
And we thought, oh, no, that's just a bit too tokenistic. So, yeah.
And we were getting to the stage where we were just about to call it anything because we couldn't agree on
Albert.
a name. And then somebody, and who was it? Was it Stefan, I think?
Stefan.
Thank you, Stefan, came up with the new name Skeptic Zone. And it just sort of, yeah, why not? It worked. And he came up, if you can see, the people here in the audience with us can see all the range of logos on the T-shirts we have. I like the one with the brain, Skeptic Zone, thinking caps required. I quite like that.
Good fun.
A new segment within the show is going to be called the Think Tank. We were thinking about using the name Think Tank. And what we're going to do back in Sydney, Australia, we're going to every week, there's 4 skeptics going to meet in a pub or a restaurant or something like that, 1 microphone, a couple of bottles of wine, and discuss issues of the day. And we have some new people taking part in that. Dr. Rachael Dunlop, who is a medical researcher in Australia. Ow! Do you know her? Yeah. And a good friend of ours, Amanda Rose, and Michael Wolloghan, who's one of our reporters from the old show. Basically, it's just to discuss issues of the day, a short segment within the new show. And we're looking forward to that.
If you're not familiar with the show, we have an interesting sort of aspect in that we have an international reporter in the form of Dr. Karen Stolzno. And obviously we have people from all different sides of Australia. In fact, the only 2 people who are able to meet regularly are probably Michael Wolloghan and Richard Saunders, who are both in Sydney.
Yeah. We're never together in the same room. It just doesn't happen.
This is the first time I met Dr. Karen Stolzno, for example, here at DragonCon. So.
I can't stand you either.
Oh, God, we have to share a room?
Yeah.
She gets in the way of my bunny ears. I don't.
I was sharing a room with him on the first night, and the floors here are not what they're cracked up to be. I can
Let's not get into that.
There's a little pyramid of pillows, and I said, oh, poor Richard.
All right. Now, for those of you listening and those of you here who would have known the old show just recently over the last year, it was purely a video-based one on YouTube. That's still going to continue in some forms. It's going to be an audio show now, but we're going to have special video reports because it's so much fun to do video. So we're going to say, here's our show. If you want to see the extra footage, the extra features, free, go to YouTube. It's all there, and you can watch yourselves if you happen to be on it, or whatever the case may be. And all the old episodes that we filmed are going to stay there forever at that website, which is tankvodcast.wordpress.com, and you can still comment on them and watch them all. So that's not going away. You did some great reports. Karen and Kylie, they both had video cameras. Kylie would film reports in Western Australia, mostly. There was one she did where she went to the beach with a picture of James Randi and was asking bikini women who this man was.
It's funny that you remembered,
weren't they?
Yeah, it's funny that you remembered the bikini women. I asked a whole pile of people, but
did you?
Can't think of anything else. Yeah.
But yes,
it stands out.
Yeah, it was a gorgeous group of 5 young ladies who I showed a picture of yourself, Phil Plate, and James Randi, and they said, we have no idea who he is. And they happen to be American. And they said, sorry, we're not from around here. And I said, well, 2 of them aren't from around here either. And they said, are they world leaders? And I said, I'm certain James Randi and Phil Plate would be very flattered to think that they got that. Yeah,
they think so.
Yeah.
And so that was terrific. So Karen would film her stuff on a little mini DV camera and send me the tapes.
I'd get them the day later in the post, and I could edit them from there. With Dr. Karen Stolzno, she was filming with a little digital recorder.
That's right, a small wonder RCA, just a little pocket video camera.
Pocket video camera, and to get me the stories, she would FTP them, put them up on a server, and then I could download them and edit them from there. Now, Karen, you had some interesting experiences when you were filming stories for the show. I liked the one where you did the protests in San Francisco. Can you tell everybody about that?
Anonymous versus Scientology, if you remember that. I filmed the activities in San Francisco and interviewed people there. I've been to the Alamo in San Antonio and attended a ghost tour, and I spoke with someone who conducts those tours. I interviewed paranormalists at a paranormal conference in Las Vegas. Lots of things. I've been touring the country and sussing out all of this. So much here, so much fodder here.
You're just fodder people.
Yeah. Fodder.
I did also appreciate some of the stories that Karen filed where she would interview paranormal people and very religious people just to get their take and their point of view. And you were never...
we can make lots of assumptions about what these people believe. I think if we're skeptics, we need to know what we're skeptical about. And so I like to hear everyone's versions and everyone's opinions and beliefs.
There is a line some people take, and I take this line sometimes, where if you give people enough rope...
I feed off that,
yeah.
With my articles.
It can work where you take them to task if they have some silly belief or whatever the case may be. But sometimes it works if you just say, well, really, can you tell me more about it? And they can get themselves tangled up into knots when they try to explain what they really think.
Yeah, maybe their thoughts aren't even clarified, and this is a good way of understanding what they believe and correcting them if we can.
Yeah, but it's interesting, too, when you're running around with a little camera, like... You've seen the flip cameras and the bitty ones you can get these days. You can get away with a lot. But if you turn up with a big camera, people are nervous or they don't want to talk to you. But these days the quality on both are not too dissimilar. So I when I was doing interviews, I found it so much easier. If I just had something resting in my hand that looked tiny and insignificant, people weren't worried. But I've got a professional camera at home, sort of sits up here. No one wants to know. Yeah. No one wants to know about that. So you used a little mini DV camera, didn't you?
Yes, I just, let me see, the one that I have is slightly smaller than the camera up there on display. Yeah. And that was due to your recommendation, and easy to charge up, easy to throw in the batteries, light to hold. And I would just go around, I must admit, I'm rather selfish in terms of my reports because I go out and find things that I like, and I like superstition. So I went out.
We all do that. I do.
Yeah. And I just say to myself, okay, well, I must admit, I'm a little envious of Karen because she goes out and finds things which are current and relevant. And
there's so much stuff here in America.
Oh yeah, there is just no way I'd go anywhere near a Scientology rally.
I live in Berkeley. I used to live in Berkeley, so. Sympathise.
Yeah, interesting central. But I'm just too scared to go near a Scientology rally, even though I know that what the anonymous group are doing are great, and I have a few friends who are involved in that. But in my case, I thought to myself, okay, I'm intrigued by the academic side, and I thought, well, nobody ever seems to talk much about theatre superstitions and sports superstitions, and I wanted to find out more about why so many highly intelligent elite athletes and brilliant theatre people are engaged in these sorts of behaviours. And so that was a focus of mine for a time. And other things that I've done, let me see.
You spoke with Tim Minchin?
Tim Minchin. I'm interested in the art side. I recall that Richard did a fantastic report, was it, upon the art and science skeptic.
All my reports are fantastic. But which one do you mean exactly?
Which one? There was a particular report, I believe it was on Skeptic Camp, and it talked about how we need to extend beyond just the science and start having a look at how many different fields can contribute to skepticism. And, of course, comedians, artists, actors. I mean, how many people have just hopped onto YouTube and found a fabulous comedy routine or an actor saying something? I mean, even David Tennant talking to
have we interviewed David Tennant? What?
Oh, if you want me to, I'll give it a try. You never know. But David Tennant saying, horoscopes are a load of garbage, something like that.
This is a great time for skepticism, though, because there are so many actors and writers and people identifying with skepticism and with atheism. So
it makes people stop and say, okay, that little soundbite that's come out there, maybe I should find out more about it. And so we should talk to these people and why they're saying this.
It's also interesting to consider that in the old days when people were making a TV show, it would go out, be aired, maybe it would be in rerun, And it's not until now you can buy the DVDs of all these old shows. But when we produce a show for the internet, it's there. It's not going away. You can always have access to it.
Yeah. I've got about 5 YouTube videos of this conference up already online. I was trying to upload one this morning, but it froze. So there should be Day 2, Part 1 up on later today, I hope.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Now it's time for a commercial break.
Whee!
The Australian Skeptic magazine, The Skeptic, brought to you by Australian Skeptics, comes out 4 times a year. Dr. Karen Stolzno will become the new editor of The Skeptic magazine, and you can...
Thank you. Thanks.
You can subscribe to The Skeptic magazine, only $44.
The third best in the world.
What?
It's the third best magazine.
I see. Thank you, Karen.
Until I take over, see.
Well, we have got a copy of Skeptical Inquirer right here on the desk.
Put that down.
And I have been selling Skeptic magazine over at the other hall, so
I see.
we have to acknowledge our
Yes, you can subscribe.
in skepticism.
Be quiet, this is a paid ad.
Sorry.
You can subscribe to the Skeptic magazine, the Australian Skeptic magazine, by visiting www.skeptics.com.au, and we spell our skeptics with a K, not a C, as it happens. But I sincerely recommend that you visit skeptics.com.au and check out the website, check out Australian Skeptics. We have videos and free downloads and all sorts of things. See what we've been up to down under.
And we're just going to get better and better with Karen now at the helm.
Thank you.
That's right.
Woo.
You're listening to The Skeptic Zone. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com. When I'm not tuned into the Skeptic Zone, I'm recording the Skeptoid podcast, doing what I can to further knowledge by blasting away the widespread pseudosciences that infect popular culture. I've also compiled a 40-minute educational video on critical thinking called Here Be Dragons at herebedragonsmovie.com. I hope you check those out, and I hope you enjoy The Skeptic Zone.
Hello, this is Carly Sturgis with my first report for the new Skeptic Zone. Mark Roberts, an amateur historian and former New York City tour guide, says that he is an ordinary man, but he's one who took up an extraordinary challenge. In 2006, there was a peak in pseudoscientific and historical revisionism propagated by conspiracy theorists about the tragedies of September the 11th, 2001, often known as 9/11. These popular theories include the claims that the US government committed or deliberately allowed the attacks, that no airliner hit the Pentagon or crashed in a field in Pennsylvania, and most persistently, that the World Trade Center buildings were destroyed by explosives and not by damage and fire. So in response to these groups, Mark Roberts, also known by the name Gravy on several internet forums, was inspired to challenge the false claims of the 9/11 Truth movement. Much of his work can be seen online at wtc7lies.googlepages.com. In this exclusive interview taped in New York whilst I was travelling to DragonCon to present with other members of the Skeptic Zone, psychology professor and Fulbright scholar Dr. Mark Henn spoke to Mark Roberts about his experiences. Dr. Henn has contributed to many online discussions about the psychology behind belief and conspiracy theories, and he inspired me to film this exclusive for the Skeptic Zone.
As I understand it, I may be wrong, you don't have an area of expertise in any of these things, but you know how to research, you know how to find the experts and get the experts.
It's what I do for a living. I'm an amateur historian, and I spend a lot of my day doing research online. It's astonishing that I never came across these conspiracy theories when they were starting out in 2006, because I was looking at things about the World Trade Center all the time. I was giving tours there, every week, many times a week. At the time that I got involved in this, I was there every single day at the World Trade Center, and no one had ever asked me about these conspiracy theories. So it wasn't until I signed up at the JREF forum that immediately this stuff came about, and someone said, "Have you seen this movie Loose Change?" And I said, "No." And they said, "It's driving me crazy." So I watched it, and drove me crazy also. I went to their forum and got kicked off promptly because you can't be presenting facts to these people. and thought that was kind of odd, an odd way of searching for the truth. They were calling themselves truthers. But I had never heard of these theories before. Never.
What year was this?
This is 2006, April of 2006, when I got involved. And the theories had been coming up within hours of the attacks.
The pod and the violin.
Sure. A lot of the early conspiracy theorists for 9/11 were Holocaust deniers. Not a lot, but prominent ones, looking for another excuse to be able to present their views on what the Jews had done. But they didn't make it overtly a Jewish thing, most of them, so that they could work their way into it. They would start a website. Other people would say, wow, this stuff is really suspicious. We should look into this. And later on find out that these are hardcore Holocaust deniers and anti-Semites. And that continued for quite a while. But these sort of underground websites were growing for a long time. Not that many people knew about them. A few conspiracy nuts were really passionate about them. But didn't hit the mainstream until the video hosting sites like YouTube and Google Video really became popular. Late 2005.
Scholars for 9/11 Truth. Did that happen before or after the YouTube stuff all hit?
That happened after.
Really?
Pretty much simultaneously. But the movie Loose Change was the thing that really made things take off. Yeah. There was a group called Physicists for 9/11 Truth or something like that. And that was 2003, pretty early, but nobody really paid much attention to that. But it wasn't until the videos started hitting and getting really widespread viewership that these scholars, and I use I can't help but use scare quotes. They said, here's something for us to make our name in that we have not been able to do in our 20-year scholarly career. Lots of them have taught the scientific method. Some of them are familiar with engineering and lots of technical terms and studies and how to present your findings, and they throw it all out the window for political reasons.
I know, and you've said it many times that this stuff, you just as soon not do this. Why you?
I feel like I'm almost uniquely not qualified in terms of expertise, but in terms of I'm a single guy, got time on my hands. I'm a generalist.
Yeah.
And know how to do some of the research. Have a wide variety of interests, and always have. Know a lot about New York. A lot of this stuff is about New York. And so I saw an opportunity where I might be able to make these facts accessible to a lot of people very quickly. And that took a lot of reading. Most of the conspiracy theorists, almost none of them, have read the things that they're purporting to critique. Almost none of them.
Yeah, that's I've seen so many times in the threads. It's like, have you read it? Have you read it? And it's never.
Oh yeah, even the very top people, clearly, because they make statements such and such is not in the NIST report, and I can in my head tell them where to find it in these reports. So, it's a matter of reading 15,000 pages here, another 15,000 pages there, and taking notes, because it's no good if you're just reading it and you can't process it and make some use of it. So, all of my spare time for about a year and a half was spent doing that, which does put a crimp on the social life. I don't let this stuff spill over into my personal life at all. Most of my friends have no idea what I've been doing with all this time. Well, a vague idea.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. I didn't intend to do this forever, and I'm not doing this forever. I figured get as much as I could done as quickly as possible, and I was in a pretty good position. I had an email today from an Israeli writer living in Spain who some friend of his tried to make these arguments, and he found my website, and he wrote this long thank you email to me, which was almost more than I could read. But so grateful to see that, and especially the people who got caught up in this stuff, because a lot of smart people suspended their disbelief, because what they would say is, if even some of this stuff is true, this is damning. It's damning. Well, that's a big if.
It's a huge if.
Yeah, and you've got to establish if any of that is true. And I've looked into several hundred conspiracy theorists' claims about 9/11. 0 have been true. 0.
I saw on the Scholars for 9/11 Truth website, there was a list of, if any of these are true, and it was something like 18 different things at the time. And I remember, having read some of the JR threads, I remember going through, and there's the first one, well, no. The second one, well, no, that's ridiculous. Third, no. And I'm going down there, and I thought, why is this website still up? These questions were all very answerable questions, and they had answers, and that's what you found.
And what their mantra has been is we're just asking questions and we're demanding answers. Well, these have all been answered for years now. Yeah. And these answers, for me, when I started getting into this, the very first day I looked into this stuff, people on the Loose Change forum were asking me these same questions. I had never heard these questions before, so I spent 5 minutes and looked it up. And you can get solid answers often. Sometimes it takes a lot more time. You have to look at the original documents, whatever. But for the most part, no. For the most part, these are 5-minute, 10-minute, half an hour assignments that anyone who's out of junior high school could do.
So basically, you got a day's worth of work here, and it's taken over a year of your life. What happened?
Yeah, it's involved, and that's what the conspiracy theorists are about. This is, it's not about answering questions, it's about keeping the conspiracy theory going. They're in a little club, it's very comfortable for them, they get to act like they're doing something against the man, against the government, against some shadowy power that they feel powerless against, which is understandable to an extent. When the U.S. invaded Iraq, I have a feeling if that had not happened, we would be seeing half of this, a third of this, or less. But the political animosity coming from me too. I was right outside the street here when the Republican National Convention was happening in 2004, protesting against that. Had been marching in the streets before the U.S. invaded Iraq in protest of what we knew was coming. If that stuff hadn't happened, I'm almost certain that I wouldn't be sitting here now because this would have died out a long, long time ago. But they peaked in 2006. There was a
5-year anniversary.
Yeah, and 5-year anniversary, that's when all these videos were hitting suddenly. Everyone's making a 9/11 conspiracy video. They were very, very popular, very compelling to a lot of people. If you look at the website traffic for their big websites, it's a huge peak in September 2006. It trails off after that. September 2007 is a tiny bump, and it's almost off the scale right now.
Any reason to expect it's going to be a bump at all this year? I mean, the
bumps are happening because there's a big report that came out about World Trade Center Building 7, the final engineering report on the collapse of Building 7. Guess what? It wasn't explosives after all. And we were all shocked to hear that.
Well, it was pulled, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I still haven't read it. I had a number of interview requests on the day the report was being released, saying, we want you on our show to talk about the report. It's a 1,000-page report. And I said, respectfully declined. I would like to read it before commenting on it. This is not entertainment for me. And for a lot of people it is. For a lot of the debunkers, I think it's they like to have an argument. They like a good argument, and they like to get in the mix of it. And to me, I wish they would get their facts out there. If someone's not going to accept them or can't do the research themselves, then move along. But some people like the argument and like to beat up on some of the more crazy conspiracy theorists.
You get knee-jerk reactions in both ways too.
Yeah, and a big problem I have with it right now is that a lot of the people who have stuck in there and are the most adamant are clearly not well mentally. If you're seriously going to argue that no planes hit the World Trade Center, if you're seriously going to argue that the Twin Towers were destroyed by space beams, like a guy like Jim Fetzer, who taught critical thinking to college students, that's beyond the pale. And I'm not going to touch that. I need help, and there's no way for me to although I encourage them to get help, there's no way for me to make them do it. So, and they're going to keep going on. This isn't. People say, when is this going to end? So it is. I have a humor section of my website because some of this stuff, I need to laugh about some of this stuff, and other debunkers do, because we got very heavily into this madness because there's any intrinsic value to it whatsoever. There's almost no value into looking into most of the questions that they have because they're so easily answerable. only because so many people believe it. It's the only reason that I got involved. And we took it a bit for granted early on. We thought, well, they're making crazy videos. Anyone can see that this stuff is crazy. Or, if they find it compelling, can find these answers very quickly, easily, the way we do. No. These videos took off virally, as they say, and were spectacularly successful at spreading very, very bad information.
I had students of mine who had seen them and came to ask me about them. Well, what about this? Or what about this?
Sure.
Or this? And again, the conspiracy theories are self-contained. Any evidence against them is evidence for them. It's a conspiracy of silence that people are trying to put a lid on the evidence, and the very fact that people are debunking it is proof that it's true.
It lends it legitimacy, which is another concern of mine. That if at this point we're giving them attention, that's all they're seeking, because the facts are very plain, and don't want to keep doing that either. But yes, argument to authority, that's their main argument these days. Why should anyone believe me? And I say they shouldn't. No one should believe me. Yeah. People should look at the information that I put up on the website. Most of it is not mine. There's some analysis that's mine, quite a bit of it actually that's mine, that has never been refuted by anyone. Yeah. But other than that, don't believe me. Don't believe anybody. Get the information. I did it. Anyone can do it. Yeah. But that's their biggest argument at this point. When I debated Richard Gage a couple of months ago, almost the entire reaction from the truther community was, aha, a tour guide against a registered, licensed architect, a member of the American Institute of Architects. Game over. Yeah. Unfortunately, no. And I take a lot of pride in that, where I wanted to be able to argue any of their points, any of their claims, and be the tour guide who has no expertise, who challenges every one of their experts, and I have every one of their experts.
It's not you; it's the information.
And say, bring it on. Let's see if you can take on a tour guide. Yeah. You who spent a career doing this kind of research, and I haven't. And most of them have declined that challenge, of course.
Well, they've read David and Goliath. So I feel a little bit bad, because there are real experts on our side who don't get the attention that they deserve. I'm so indebted to people like on the JREF set, like Ryan Mackey, who's a NASA scientist who is just cold, hard facts, and he hammers away. He wrote a 300-page dissection of David Ray Griffin's material, which Griffin has never responded to, of course. No photographs. I use lots of pictures because I need to use pictures. I can't do it all with words. He can. He knows the science code. He knows when they're getting it wrong. He's not uncritical of the official reports and things like that. Some of him.
Sure. But does it all very quietly and doesn't seek publicity or anything. So I've learned more about science from him than I have from any teacher that I ever had. Spectacular. The biggest expert we have on North American air defense is a guy in New Zealand, and who just took up an interest. Only about half of the debunkers that I know of, we actually took a poll, are from the U.S. People from Canada, people from the UK and Ireland, Finland, Sweden, Italy, Australia, New Zealand. So big interest around the world, which surprised me. But
what about the truther movement?
But really important. Yeah. Well, and that's the reason, is that these people see someone in Melbourne sees a poster up saying 9/11 was an inside job and we're having a meeting about it, and gets a little ticked off about that and says, what is this about? And does their own research. So the internet allows all of us to come together spectacularly. Initially, the truthers get a big head start, because when you're forming a conspiracy theory, you don't have to get anything right. Right. So you can start within hours of the event, as they did, start putting this information up online, speculation, accusations, and whatever. And for people like us who have to rely on evidence and facts, it takes often a long time for these things to come to light. Years, as it does with the report on Building 7 that just came out last week. And so they have a big head start. And this is not going to be the first time in the internet age that this happens, or the last time, obviously, that this happens. It's going to keep happening and keep happening. Now we know that We took this for granted. We thought this stuff can't possibly spread like that. And my big concern is that it spread not just in the U.S., but it spread in Muslim countries. You can see videos online of prominent Muslim speakers speaking to big crowds and citing chapter and verse out of Loose Change, out of Stephen Jones, who was another completely discredited former scientist, and recommending their videos, giving their argument to authorities, saying, see, all these scientists in America believe this stuff, and so it must be true. In Pakistan, only 3% of people in Pakistan believe that Al-Qaeda was responsible for 9/11. Okay? That's serious. It's not so serious when some kids in their basement are watching this, and most of them are going to get over it. Yeah. Most of them are going to realize that this is silly eventually. But places where people are really predisposed to not believe this stuff, and maybe live in a culture where that's encouraged, that's serious. So you get Americans who are appealing to that kind of crowd. There's one guy in particular, William Rodriguez, who was a World Trade Center survivor and a hero on that day. He risked his life to save other people on that day. But didn't get the attention that he felt he deserved. He was a former magician who didn't quite make it on the New York stage when he moved to New York. And he's been doing essentially stage shows about 9/11 since then, and accusing the government of being involved. These accusations didn't start until about 2005. And before that, he wasn't saying anything like that. Suddenly he's saying there were bombs in the basement and things like that, where he had his opportunity to tell his story to the people who were investigating.
I was there.
Yeah, and he did tell his story, and it was a completely different story early on. So that's a sad case where someone's looking for attention, but traveling the world, and primarily to Muslim countries, where he gets a very big reception. He converted to Islam in 2006. And a sad, very sad case of someone who's clearly traumatized. He lost dozens of friends there. He worked at the World Trade Center for 19 years. Clearly traumatized, and acted out, and still is. And still, he named his last European tour the Gravy Tour. That's my screen name at the JREF site, and he put that on his website, saying this is the Gravy Tour, because I wrote this analysis of his claims, showing that every single one of them is false, and even things that he was involved in, showing him you wouldn't necessarily have known this, but here's what was actually happening. Yeah. These people were in the thick of things, like a lot of firemen were, and had no idea what was happening around them. So you have to put these accounts together.
And one of the things that, if I'm mistaken, I'm thinking of the wrong person, he had the towers falling in reverse order, the north and south.
That was actually a fireman whose account got really abused by these guys who made Loose Change and some other conspiracy theorists. A very confused guy who says he's suffering from severe traumatic stress disorder, that his life has been hell, he says, since 9/11, lost his job, also had a situation where he was in danger of losing his pension for a positive drug test. So this is maybe some political stuff going on, I don't know. But severely confused guy who actually thought that when he was in the North Tower, when he came out of the North Tower, the lobby was devastated. It wasn't the way it was when he went up in the North Tower. All the windows are blown out. There's debris everywhere. There are bodies there. Yeah. He thought a bomb or something had gone off. Well, what had happened when he was in the North Tower, in the windowless stairwell, the South Tower had collapsed. A lot of firemen experienced the same thing. The building is shaking, but they had no idea. They had no communication. So they come downstairs and make it out. A lot of them didn't make it out. He's one of the last guys to make it out. He had no idea. He thought he saw both towers collapse afterwards. Now he's telling that story to these conspiracy theorists on camera. They know that didn't happen. They know what the sequence of events was, and none of them corrected him. Not only then, but afterwards. They could have said, all right, let's let him tell his story, and then afterwards we'll editorialize, or nuh-uh. They put it up as if this guy saw a bomb. He said he thinks bombs were there, so there must have been bombs there, and never told him. And so I wrote up a report about that and his experience and who he was with, showing exactly what was happening to him, which you can do from the recorded accounts. But most of these firemen aren't going to go back and try to relive that stuff.
It'd be horrible.
Oh, absolutely. And so lots of people, I have a whole section of that report documenting the confusion, a lot of temporal confusion. Some people thought these events happened over hours and hours. Some people who were there for many hours after the event didn't know that the towers had collapsed, and they're right there on the scene. Okay, that's how much smoke and dust and all that was happening. Enormous confusion.
Oh, yeah.
The truthers take advantage of that confusion, and it's so reprehensible of them. These people lost, so many of their coworkers and friends and loved ones, and to abuse those accounts is the most reprehensible thing I can think of, and they're still doing it. The very first thing I did was write up a report on the movie Loose Change, which was the big new movie. I heard that these guys were coming to New York, and they were going to be protesting at the premiere of the movie United 93, which was about the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania. The heroic passengers tried to retake the cockpit, weren't able to get in, but the hijackers said, we're going to crash the plane ourselves, and did. And these guys said that never happened. So they're going to come to an event where it's attended by family members of these victims and say, this stuff never happened. Your people didn't talk to you on the phone from the planes. And so I said, no, not in my backyard. I'm going to do something about it. So I watched the movie, took copious notes on it, wrote a 150-page paper on it, and put a lot of those on CDs. I knew they'd be handing out their DVDs. So while they were doing that, they had no idea who I was. I show up at their event, and they're right across the street from the premiere. Limos are pulling up and all that. It's the opening of the Tribeca Film Festival, Robert De Niro's film festival. And a very well-received movie. It won Best Drama from the New York Film Critics. It's a hell of a movie. And so as they're handing out their DVDs, I'm handing out these CDs with this paper on them. They have no idea. They had never had any opposition before. Okay? And so I was very happy to do that, and they finally found out who I was. But how many people are going to read a 150-page paper? At that time, it was a PDF document. It wasn't even online. And very few. A guy in Canada said, oh, wow, I really like that. It totally dissects this movie line by line. And he made a video of my paper, basically. And that was a big hit. That got a lot of views. And then I said, this is a young guy. He gets it. He gets the whole video thing. I didn't get it at the time, right? And that's happened a few times. I wrote up a paper about just different quotes from these truth movement leaders and how horrible and reprehensible they were when they were talking to people who they thought were their own audience. But these are things that they promoted, radio shows they did that they promote on their websites. Mm-hmm. All I did was listen to their radio shows and their presentations and take notes. And it's absolutely shocking, accusing victims of being in on the crimes, and I mean, horrible. So these aren't just naive, innocent people who get things wrong. A lot of them are vicious about it, and they've learned finally. But so I put that paper out. People were shocked by these things. They thought these were just ignorant people. No, they're a lot more than that. Well, the same guy makes a video out of that paper, right? Brilliant and shorter, obviously. Yeah. Very few people are going to read another 100-page paper. Lots of people watch the video. He got more death threats than I did, because younger people, especially who are more impressionable, are going to be watching the videos. I get a lot of emails from older folks who will take the time to read papers. But the young folks are watching the videos. And it took me a while. I did finally, a pretty long video called World Trade Center Not a Demolition, which takes almost all the major claims about the World Trade Center buildings and shows, especially visually, why they're wrong. They rely a lot on visuals. And
yes, it's YouTube research.
Yeah.
If it's not on YouTube, it didn't happen.
Yeah. And some of them actually said, we'll say, who needs science when we have YouTube to show us what happened? Mm-hmm. And they really believe that. And that's encouraged by people who do know better. Now, a big part of this is in terms of understanding the engineering, understanding of what you're looking at when you see a skyscraper collapse, which is not a familiar event to anyone. We've never seen that before. So we have nothing to gauge it against. A big part of that, you have to know some science, something about the way the physical world works. And a lot of these people don't. And so to them, anything is possible. Not only that, but equally possible.
What gets me is some of the experts who thought that they should fall like trees.
But there's the problem. What happened was that these experts who do know better, convinced a lot of these people to be their followers. This guy, Stephen Jones, I used this in a presentation at a TAM event, defined entropy as things topple over. Meaning Building 7, because it was damaged on one side, should have fallen like a tree. Well, actually, the thing that caused it to fall was fire in the center of the building that destroyed columns inside the building. There was no other way for the building to fall but straight down. But that definition of entropy wouldn't be suitable for a 6-year-old, much less a college audience, which was his audience. And this is a physics professor. Spent 20 years teaching physics, working in big physics labs. He knows that is absolutely dead wrong. But they will say anything to get an audience. And so they convince these people that their physical reality can actually be reality. And so you get these guys, these pathetic guys, stacking up Coke cans on the internet and then dropping another one on top and saying, see, the whole thing didn't collapse, and so the World Trade Center shouldn't have collapsed because this is a valid analog to the towers. It's better than the computer models that the world's best engineers have developed. And they believe it. And they're confident enough in that to make a video, often with their faces on it, and say, here's my message to you, world. I know more about engineering than the experts do. Total disdain for expertise, which is taught to them by people who are experts.
Who know better. It reminds me an awful lot of the creationists. You see, like Dwayne Gish out there giving his definitions that, this is Asimov's definition. And I recognize that definition from Asimov's Physics Dictionary for Children. And they've been corrected a million times. Just like anybody who's been in a debate with you has been corrected a million times.
Oh, sure.
It doesn't stop them the millionth first time.
Yeah, it's a great analogy because this is a religious movement. It didn't, I don't think, start out that way. I think it started out with a lot of people who did have questions that they at least believed were legitimate, and lots of things were confusing and take some study and research. But it became quickly a religious movement. As I said, not a single significant claim correct.
They take it all in faith.
Yeah. You've got to be a special kind of person to stick with that. And one thing they have is consistency. Why introduce any facts now where we've developed this world that's a fantasy?
Any advice for what are the right ways and the wrong ways to go about?
This is a fun question because I got involved in this stuff with no intention of being involved. I have no experience with conspiracy theories beyond some JFK stuff, no particular interest in it, and especially no real knowledge of the psychology of a conspiracy theorist. And I didn't have the luxury of the time to learn about it. Fortunately, I found out about it at a place like the JREF, where all sorts of people like you are knowledgeable about this stuff and have already written about it and were in the process of writing more about it as these conspiracy theories were growing. Because I was clueless about how to approach these things.
Yeah, that's fool.
So I took every approach. It was all trial and error for me. And it started out very, very angry. Anger is what sustained me through this whole thing. I never would have finished a single paper if it weren't just spitting anger at these people who go to Ground Zero every Saturday and claim that firemen were in on the conspiracy and things like that. This is intolerable. But what I would do, I started going there to counter them on weekends. And take different approaches with different people. If someone's new coming into the movement, obviously is brand new there, they're handing out leaflets, I've never seen them before. You take a completely rational, calm approach, and ask them what they know about it. Have you read this? Have you read that? Here's my website. Here's some things to look at, and let's talk next time you come out. And there's videos of me out there doing that at length, and I'm glad to talk for an hour or more to someone about that if they want to. To people who are there every week, however, totally different approach. You get right up in their face and say, here's the same damn poster you said saying the hijackers are still alive from last week. Did you look at the material I sent you? Have you looked at the 36-page paper I wrote on this subject right here? where I've given you the link for the past 10 weeks. And of course not. And the idea of that is getting really aggressive in their face, not physically aggressive.
Oh, no.
Although they have tried to block me physically from putting signs up and things like that. They've torn up my literature. First Amendment, what's that? But the idea is to make them so mad and frustrated that they're going to go home and they're going to do some research.
Prove you wrong.
It never happened.
Never.
This is over a year. I wasn't going every week. I'm not crazy. I'm nuts, but I'm not crazy.
See, I was thinking that you were in their face for the people who were out there watching.
In part, yeah. In part. But really, it was to get them so worked up that they're going to say, I'm going to show that Mark Roberts next week. I'm going to come back with the facts that are going to refute what he just said. Right? Never happened once. You come back and it's a replay, and you realize these people are not capable. Yeah, the leaders anyway in the hardcore group are not capable of doing that. And so I stopped doing that. There's no point, and the newcomers weren't coming so much anymore. So there's no point in continuing with that kind of episode, especially at Ground Zero, which to a lot of people is something of a sacred place.
Yeah.
Although it's a very busy touristy place also. So just let them fester in their own whatever you want to call it. But yeah, another sad episode. These are people who can't. A really interesting thing that you might be interested in. I would go there with this binder full of material. They would say, oh, the hijackers' names weren't even on the passenger manifest. So I said, yeah, here they are, all of them. Okay, there they are. This didn't happen. Well, yeah, here's a photo of it happening right there. There you go. And so many times when I would open up that binder to show them something, they physically couldn't look at it. It was like a vampire and a cross. Really, and it was shocking to me because we'd be talking or arguing passionately about this stuff for 10 minutes, and I'd go, I actually have that right here, and boom, literally can't look at it, or usually just walk away. And this is on video. I'm not making this up. This is stunning to me. A physical aversion to facts.
You happen to notice over the political campaigns that the truthers would tend to follow a particular candidate or anything like that?
Well, Ron Paul was a big presidential candidate, a libertarian, and he outright said, I do not support these people, although he knew they were supporting him, and I don't, he claimed to not be aware of this.
Well, if you're aligning yourself with those people, then you're essentially taking a stand against the fire department of New York. No, you can't. Not a politician. No politician.
No, you can't. But still would like their votes. So I don't know how things that got discussed in the back rooms there. It would be interesting to be a fly on the wall there. Well, it's an intro into other political issues. Also, it's a way of saying whether it's a peak oil issue, whether it's we're in the Mideast, invading the Mideast because of oil and things like that, and certainly legitimate arguments you can make there. They think that they're bringing people into those arguments, but no. What they're doing is absorbing a lot of active young people who could be activists for causes that could really make a difference and that have facts associated with them, and diverting their attention and getting them absorbed in hundreds of hours of videos. And people like Noam Chomsky, the truthers really wanted Noam Chomsky on their side. A lot of the truthers are leftists, and I'm left of center myself in my politics. Did he say, get out of my face. And he said right out that you guys are doing a terrible thing. You're distracting from all these real issues, real political issues. You don't want George Bush in office? Well, there's things that we could be doing right now. And they weren't. They were doing the opposite. If I were the people in power who these truthers claim to be against, I would be sending them money, because absolutely the best thing for them are these horrible distractions, and no focus on real issues.
Well, it sounds like a conspiracy theory.
Well, I've worked on it. That's right. And my name is Mark Roberts. Thank you.
The Australian Skeptics National Convention for 2008 will be held in Adelaide, South Australia. The convention will be held on Saturday the 11th and Sunday the 12th of October. You can enjoy presentations by speakers such as Rob Morrison and Dean Hutton from The Curiosity Show, Professor Ian Plimer, Glenn Smith, Loretta Marin, the Jellybean Lady, Mike McRae, Kylie Sturgis, Richard Saunders even. To book your seats at this great convention, visit www.skeptics.com.au. The Australian Skeptics National Convention. See you in October in Adelaide.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
Well, welcome Rachael Dunlop, Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello, Richard.
Welcome Michael Wolloghan.
Cheers.
And we're at the local club here near where I live. And there's a big crowd here tonight just to watch us. Actually, they're watching football at the moment.
I thought they were here for International Speak Like a Pirate Day, Ricardo.
It is International Speak Like a Pirate Day. I noticed that.
It is.
Arr, arr. Right, that's gone. Thank you. So this is welcome to the very first Think Tank section of the new Skeptic Zone podcast. And this is where we have a little drink.
See, there really are drinks.
They really are drinks. And we discuss issues of the skeptical matter of the day.
Yes, I've been digging away. I found an interesting news article today about the Premier of New South Wales. Now, he's the equivalent of our local government. For those of you who don't know what Premier is. For those in the States, he's like a governor, sort of. Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, he came out today with endorsing some cryptozoology that's been sort of floating around New South Wales for quite some time. People have spotted what they think is a black panther living on the other side of the mountains.
But this is an old story, isn't it?
It is an old story, but he endorsed it today and said that he thinks we need to do further research because perhaps it's not just a myth.
Did I hear that he said people have been contacting him saying this is real?
Yes. And he's also had in the endorsement of Tim the Yowie Man, who I believe you know a bit about, Richard.
I know Tim the Yowie Man. He's a nice bloke. I'm not sure if he really believes there are Yowies out there or he's just having a go, but he's a colourful character.
Well, if he doesn't believe it, he's now asking the government to spend money on researching Yowies. In fact, he said that not only does he want the government to research the so-called Lithgow panther, but also the Burrawang bunyip, the UFOs of the Central Coast, and Yowies.
I used to live on the Central Coast. I don't remember the Yowies or the UFOs.
Well, you obviously weren't looking properly, Richard, because apparently there is something called the UFOs of the Central Coast. Anyway, it's quite funny because the opposition party, the government opposition party here has come out and said that this new Premier is a fool and it shouldn't be spending money on researching a apparently mythical panther when we've got a crisis in the budget and the public transport system doesn't work.
And normally the opposition in any state or in the federal system sort of have a knee-jerk reaction. They love to pick on the government, but in this case, I think
they might be right. Yes, that's possible. But I tell you what, Richard, journalists have had a field day today with headlines surrounding this story.
Yeah.
One of them was that the Premier's name is Nathan Rees. Has Rees put Bigfoot in it? Was one headline. There was another one that said, Premier sinks claws into mystery. So if nothing else, journalists have had some fun with it today. But it's interesting because the reason that, in fact, the National Parks and Wildlife Service in New South Wales in 2005 did spend a couple of $100,000 researching this properly and came up with no evidence to suggest that there was a roaming panther. However, the reason that they did that research to begin with was because a 17-year-old boy was attacked by something and had presented with lacerated arms and blood, and through a Freedom of Information Act thing, someone found that the government was actually keeping a file on this panther, and so now it's being referred to as the government's X-file.
Oh no.
And so the believers... mysterious. Yeah, well, the believers are saying, well, if it doesn't exist, then why does the government have a file on it? So they did actually do some extensive research, and they got feline experts to come and examine what they... Well, actually the feces is called scat.
Yes.
Yeah, and so they've had laboratories test the scat to see if they can ascertain whether it's from a panther or a leopard.
That gasp you heard just then wasn't because of Rachel's incredible insights into this mystery. Ooh, it's because on the large TV screen here is a local football game in action.
Who's playing, Richard?
I have no idea.
Who are you barracking for?
The Panthers.
Oh, that's very funny. There is actually a football team called the Penrith Panthers, that is true.
It's quick. That was
very quick.
That was quick.
Well done, well done. Anyway, we'll see how this pans out, but
Yes, well. Now, Michael, what do you have there?
Well, I have a very important story that I've been following. You're going to be blown away by this.
Yeah.
Apparently, Robbie Williams wants to quit the music business and devote himself to looking for aliens.
Oh, is that right?
I haven't heard this.
I started following this story at the beginning of the week. Now, apparently Robbie's became obsessed with life on other planets and claims to have seen aliens twice. Well, I know what you're thinking. It's probably a publicity stunt.
I'm thinking it's probably a publicity stunt.
But
Though he is pretty mad.
he is apparently locked into an £80 million recording deal, but spends most of his time stargazing and chatting on UFO websites.
Don't we all?
So you mean he hasn't been recording any music lately?
Yeah, essentially. He hasn't been recording any music.
Oh, okay.
And one of the interesting things I found today relating to Robbie was that he has been dumped by his girlfriend after she reportedly got sick of playing second fiddle to his UFO obsession.
Oh my goodness.
So I think we should ruminate over that. One of the sad things I heard this week, I don't know if you heard this story about Pink.
I didn't
Apparently
know.
Pink has became or is investigating Scientology.
Really?
Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't.
Pink is what's Pink's authority on Scientology?
Well, apparently from the stories I've been reading, she has recently split up with her husband.
Has she?
And she needs some solace.
Oh.
So she's turned to her good friends, the Scientologists,
I see.
of which there are many,
Oh yes.
and now she's investigating that, which is very sad.
So she's investigating the possibility of becoming
Well,
a member.
she's been cited at the Celebrity Centre in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
Now, you've had something to do with the protest against Scientology here in Sydney, Michael. And for those people out there, if you care to visit our old site, which is tankvodcast.wordpress.com, you can actually see Michael's report about the protest in Sydney about Scientology.
The anonymous protest
Yes.
where they might
That's right. So, yeah, I hope she isn't getting involved with the Church of Scientology, because I've always, even though I'm not a massive fan of Pink, I've always thought she seemed to be quite bright and...
She is. She is quite
a positive figure.
But of course her fans will pick up on this, and it's true, you know, if you have a celebrity status, people tend to regard you as being correct or right or something like this.
That's actually really disappointing, Michael, because I sat in on an interview that she did with Andrew Denton, and for those of you who don't know who Andrew Denton is, he's a highly respected journalist.
And James Bogue.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Well, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
That's
I've got two left. Who wants them?
they're gone. I'll have one. That's a beer from
Tasmania.
Tasmania. Thank you very much. It's very
great.
kind of you.
Most popular beer there and growing everywhere else.
Is that just the draft that you've got
Yeah,
there?
it is the draft. And they're only $2.60 for a midi at the bar.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Wow.
cheers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Should we leave that in, Richard, for the think tank?
We'd like
All
to
you
thank
want is to keep it
James
real.
Bogue for this section of the Skeptic Zone. Cheers.
For those of you that don't know what just happened, we just got given 3 free beers. Yay! How's it taste, Richard?
With champagne, not bad.
Beer from Tasmania.
And now we've lost the train of our conversation. Pink and Scientology, of course.
I was going to say that I sat in on an interview with her that was done by Andrew Denton, who is a well-known Australian personality.
Oh, he's.
interviewer.
I think Andrew Denton is one of the best interviewers in the world.
He's fantastic.
He is incredible.
He is, and he recently made a documentary film called God on My Side, which people should look up. It's very interesting. It's an exploration of religious fanaticism and TV evangelism. He went to a religious conference in America, I believe, didn't he?
Yes, he did, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, no, he...
It was sort of like the Dragon Con for religious broadcasters.
Televangelists.
Yeah, that's right, it was a televangelist.
Of course.
But I sat in on an interview he did with Pink, and she was really smart and sassy, and I was quite impressed by her. And I'm not a huge fan of her music either, but after that I had some respect for her, but I'm a bit uncertain if that's...
Well, let's see how it pans out, huh?
Yeah.
On to another story.
Yep.
Oh, I had a really good segue then. No.
Well, more than more.
Because I was going to talk about Pan Pharmaceuticals when you said, let's see how it pans out.
Oh!
Speaking of that...
Yes, go on.
Pan Pharmaceuticals. No, Michael, sorry.
No. I think yours is better.
All right. Well, this has been a huge story in Australia for the last 7 years. We had one of the world's biggest manufacturers of herbal medicines and alternative therapies, a place called Pan Pharmaceuticals, and it was closed down by our regulatory body known as the TGA, which is the same as the FDA in America. Back in 2001, because it was found that one of their very popular drugs is a medicine to help travel sickness, and it's called Travacalm. And there was reports of adverse effects, and 20 people were hospitalised with psychosis and with blackouts and with hallucinations. And when the investigation was done by the TGA, it was found that their pills had between 0 and 700% of the active ingredient. And apparently it was eventually put down to the fact that they just weren't stirring the mixture before they put it into the little pills. So in any case, a whole lot of their products were recalled. Eventually in 2003 they went into liquidation, they went bankrupt. They were charged with something like 34 cases of negligence and grievous bodily harm, etc. The trial finally finished today, and the outcome was not good. Basically what happened was in November 2005 they pleaded guilty to 24 charges relating to supplying defective medication, and they were fined $3 million. And the CEO and owner of the company decided that the TGA had a vendetta against him, and it was just a witch hunt, so he then sued them. And that happened today. The ruling came down today. It was settled between the Australian Securities Commission and the TGA and himself. He was eventually fined $10 million for 5 offences. However, the judge awarded him $55 million in compensation, $5 million of which is going to his legal team. And on top of that, the charges against him have been dropped. So this is not good for alternative medicine in this country, because now it looks like he's been vindicated as
You mean it is good for alternative
well,
medicine?
yes, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So he's now come out, and his lawyer is already starting a class action suit, where they've got already something like 200 people on the books, which include CAM practitioners, alternative medicine people, who all say they lost money and they lost clients after Pan was closed down. So they now want to sue the Australian government for loss of money and loss of business. And they're starting to already put that together. They've apparently got 20,000 pages worth of evidence to take to court. Now, somehow, our Australian government is paying him $55 million.
There could be an appeal, I don't know.
But they settled it, so it wasn't the judge's decision. They settled. They agreed to give him $55 million.
I wish someone would agree to give me $55 million.
Me too.
I would agree to that.
But the thing is, what's interesting about this case now is already all the blogs and websites have started up with the big pharma conspiracy, right? And I found a couple of things today on a blog, and I was making so many gasping noises at work that people thought there was something wrong with me. But someone had written that the TGA, the Therapeutics Goods Administration, are drug masters, and the TGA, and I quote, works for the health of the drug companies' bank accounts and not for the personal health of Australian citizens.
This is an old story, of course, when in sort of like the last refuge of the scoundrel. conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, the other thing that was mentioned on this website, which I thought was quite interesting, was apparently this gentleman's name, I can't recall, Richard, you know it, is Jim Selim?
Sorry, Jim Selim.
Jim Selim?
Yeah.
He applied to set up a company very similar to Pan Pharmaceuticals in Vietnam several years ago, and the TGA quashed that immediately based on his previous offences and what he'd been charged for. So he wasn't able to do that, and on this website now it says that, isn't it interesting that since that time some of the big pharmaceuticals have set up shop in Vietnam and Jim hasn't been able to. So obviously it's a big pharma conspiracy.
Conspiracy theories, again, it's the ultimate...
You're just a stooge. You're a liar.
I should declare that I work in science, so I use some of these pharmaceutical companies' products, so perhaps I am a big pharma stooge. You never know.
I knew it.
You never know.
Michael, I knew it.
Absolutely.
So, Michael, what have you got there now?
I have a story from Central Africa that accusations that a soccer player was using witchcraft during a match in the eastern Congo sparked a riot that killed 13 people. A UN-funded radio station reported this on Monday, and most of the victims were between the ages of 11 and 16.
Oh, wow.
Oh, God.
And I think that's the most upsetting thing.
Here's a segue. This reminds me of the site whatstheharm.net.
Yes, I'm familiar with that site.
It's a brilliant site.
Yeah.
If people out there, please visit whatstheharm.net. But that's horrifying. Again, it just brings home the fact that again, people say to me, well, so it might not be true, but what's the harm? Well, hello.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things about, certain countries, they have certain superstitions and they need to promote science, reason and critical thinking because, looking at this and so many young people have died because of it.
Yeah.
It's just not acceptable as far as I'm concerned.
That reminds me of a friend of mine at work. His in-laws gave him a T-shirt recently and he's too scared to wear it outside of the house. And when I tell you what it says, you'll understand why.
Oh, yes?
Written on the front of it is, too stupid to understand science? Try religion instead. He's too scared to wear it outside of the house. And I can see why.
So, Rachel, another story.
I don't have another story, Ricardo.
So, Michael, another story.
Okay, this is my last story, and apparently scientists have discovered that going vegetarian could be bad for your brain, with those on a meat-free diet 6 times more likely to suffer brain shrinkage.
Oh,
What?
Really?
What?
Now, this is due to the fact that vitamin B12 deficiency can cause this, and this is a study that's recently taken place.
Does this only happen during development? So if you're, as a child, if you're a vegetarian, it's a problem, or is it a problem across the board?
This is from the Times of India, huh?
That's right.
Oh, wow. Melbourne, scientists have discovered that going veggie could be bad for your brain with a meat-free diet. Okay, wow.
But there was one very important part of this study that I had to reflect on, that beer does less damage than wine, according to a study in alcohol and alcoholism.
Well, I'm glad that lady earlier
Let me
gave us
have
beer.
another beer.
I'm drinking champagne, everyone, so what's that going to do to me? More damage than you.
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh. But it makes me feel better, and it makes bubbles make you laugh, Richard, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Dr. Rachel.
Thank you, Richard.
This has been a fantastic first think tank for the new Skeptic Zone.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure, and now I think we're probably going to find something to eat, huh?
No, we're going to go and try and win the meat tray, Richard, aren't we?
Are we?
Yes, we're going to go in the meat tray raffle and see if we can win a meat tray.
And have another barbecue.
Yes.
Sounds good to me.
It's the Australian thing to do.
It is. Until next time, thank you.
Attention please, don't forget, evening's entertainment in the Star Auditorium is John Williamson. For those modern tickets to the show, please make way for the auditorium as the show will be commencing soon. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ginger Campbell. I started the Brain Science Podcast in December 2006 with the tagline, "The show for everyone who has a brain," because you don't need a PhD to enjoy my podcast. All you need is curiosity about how our brains make us who we are. The Brain Science Podcast is not a self-help show, but understanding how the brain works will give you useful insights into your own behavior and the behavior of others. On the show, I talk about the latest books about the brain, and I interview leading scientists. Of course, I would love to be discovered by NPR. But until then, you can find the Brain Science Podcast in iTunes and at brainsciencepodcast.com.
Richard, I am totally zoned out right now. That was an incredible first episode of the Skeptic Zone.
You're zoned out. Well, I'm zoned in. How does this work?
Well, hey, now I'm getting skeptical of my own skepticism.
Oh, that's a good thing to be.
I'm in the zone.
Now, Stefan, have you visited our website, www.skepticzone.tv?
Visited it, I registered the domain name.
So you did. Now, did you know, and you probably did, there's a blog there.
Yes.
And a Flickr site so you can see photographs. You can even see us doing this right now.
We are fully Web 2.0-ified here in the zone.
Web 2.0. Is that the latest?
Oh, maybe not.
Maybe 3 by now, 4.5 or something like that?
No, we're creating a whole new web for ourselves here, a whole new zone.
I think so.
What a great episode, and I'm looking forward to a whole new series now. We've got a lot coming up.
And stretching on and on and on. We've got lots of interviews already lined up, ready to go. We're going to be interviewing some people like Dr. Eugenie Scott from the National Centre for Science Education pretty soon.
I've heard of Eugenie Scott.
She's great. She's wonderful. She's one of these people who fights the rat-bag creationists out there. And
she's got a fight on her hands.
She does. A quick mention... those of you in Sydney, and especially those of you who go to Macquarie University, there's a new skeptics group there. If you go to macquarieskeptics.homestead.com or Google Macquarie Skeptics, brand new group. They have got some meetings coming up, and I'm even giving a talk.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just up the road.
That's not far from here at all.
That's well and truly within the zone.
It's in the zone.
That's great. Yeah, no, that is very, very close to here. I think I'll come along.
Excellent, Steph. Well, I'll see you there, and you'll hear us in a couple of weeks in the next episode.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. It's great to be back, and we've got a great bunch of shows coming up over the next few weeks.
Bye for now.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.